So I spend a lot of time flying the jets in Battlefield 4, and one of the things I like most about flying in this game is the many styles your gameplay can have. A good pilot will play a certain way and slightly adapt to the situation, but a great pilot will often analyze the situation and push the jet to its absolute limits given what it's up against. In this video I want to talk about that aggressive piloting technique, the kind of technique where it seems like you're always in the enemy's face, which often leads to a load of kills and the salty enemies that come with it. Before we get into it though, if you do end up enjoying the gameplay, you might actually like my Twitch stream as well. I'm live 3 days a week and you can find the schedule on my Twitch. And for all those that ask about settings, I've actually set up a channel on my Discord where I literally give all my settings, my sweet effects configs, all that stuff. It's all in that Discord channel. So if you have any further questions, you could ask on my Twitch or ask on my Discord and we'll help you out there. Okay, so the aggressive piloting style. This is the way I like to fly the jets most in Battlefield 4, but you guys might be asking, what does this exactly mean? And the whole idea behind it is to spend less time flying around and doing nothing and just maximize the time you spend shooting enemies and actually doing stuff. And this is really important because, I mean, you miss every shot you don't take, right? So I like to try to be shooting stuff at all times in the jets. As long as I can be shooting stuff, I will be trying to do something in the jet. And that is the whole premise of this style, just maximizing the time that you're spending actually doing something. And this isn't something that you can always do. I mean, the jet in Battlefield 4 is extremely strong, and the enemy do often respond to it and try to counter it very hard. So the condition that I will almost always use this strategy against is when the enemy is mainly using stingers, iglas, or lock-on missiles against me. If the enemy responds with lots of lock-ons, I will usually fly extremely aggressively and in the way that I will show in this video. However, if the enemy are countering me using tow missiles, TV missiles, throws, s'mores, basically the one-shot weapons, that is when this style is not as effective and you have to play a lot more defensively and try to isolate your threats one by one. However, in the right conditions, if you pick this style up and you use it effectively, it is extremely rewarding and you will get some insane games like this one. So the first thing we must understand is countermeasures. To best use this style, you must use the ECM jammer. I don't care if flares work 100% of the time. The amount of time ECM gives you without being able to be locked is just extremely helpful, and its value taking you off the radar is absolutely key to this playstyle. So the ECM jammer will last for around 7 seconds once you have it active and requires about 12 seconds to recharge. This is helpful to know for many reasons, but we'll start with the whole idea of pre-ECMing, which is basically when you pop your ECM jammer before the missile even locks on. I will use this most of the time, and honestly this is the most effective way to use ECM, but in that example just before, the enemy stealth jet is pushing me with lock-ons, so I engage my ECM before he even shoots the missile, which prevents it from being locked and it forces him to use his guns. He's not ready for it and we start the dogfight. Not only this, but I do actually start the dogfight with ECM up briefly so he doesn't know which way I go, which does help me with the kind of element of surprise there. However, the main reason why I did it there was to basically eliminate the chance that he could get a lock-on onto me. If he hit me with a active radar, passive radar, or a heat seeker at the start of that dogfight, which would be possible if I didn't pre-ECM it, I would have lost the dogfight. Against a stealth jet is way too hard to deal with that, especially if you add a mobility hit into the mix. There's just no way you're going to win that situation. So by pre-ECMing, I have no chance of a missile hitting me, and at least I get to have a somewhat fair fight there. Now the other situation where I'll do a pre-ECM is when I know the enemy is going to shoot a missile. So in that situation, I'll hear a couple beeps and I'll be like, okay, this guy's going to shoot it. He's within range, he's going to shoot the missile. So then I'll pre-ECM, which reduces the chance of the missile even getting shot. I mean, it's not going to get shot at all, and if it does somehow get shot due to ping or whatever, it's probably not going to hit me. And in that case, I'll try to find another target that has a piece of cover in between that target and the stinger, and I'll go for that instead. So example, there's a stinger under me, there's a boat near the stinger, and then there's a piece of cover between those two things. So I'll basically ECM the stinger away, I'll go for the boat instead, and then I'll quickly dip behind the cover, protecting me from that stinger. It sounds a bit complicated, and it sounds like it's awfully pre-planned, and you couldn't do that in game, but trust me, once you get used to this kind of thing, and you realize what you can use for cover, it's very, very easy to do. And that situation right there, the jet's ramming, a bit unfortunate, but the final situation where I'll use an ECM before a lock actually gets shot is when I'm doing an ECM sneak. And it's a frowned upon tactic, but honestly, against a stealth jet, I will use whatever I have to do, because the stealth jet turns faster than the attack jet, so you have to use whatever tactics you can against a good stealth jet pilot. In this situation, I'll pop my ECM before I even get into the radar range of the stealth jet. So as I just barely see it appear on my radar, I'll pop my ECM and I'll fly straight at him and try to kill him before he can even see me. That basically takes me off his radar, of course, and hopefully you get the kill there. If you don't, then you have to be ready to run back to base or try to take the dogfight. But a dogfight against a good stealth jet pilot, especially if you're not an absolute top tier dogfighter in the attack jet, you're going to have an extremely hard time. Your advantage in the attack jet is the element of surprise, and you want to try to kill them in the first pass. I take head-ons in the attack jet a lot as well, so if the enemy is dumb enough to go head-on with me, I'll try to kill him without him even getting a chance to dogfight. I've done it many times before. Basically, the attack jet, you want to use any scum tactic you can to get rid of that stealth jet because it has a very unfair advantage in the dogfight. Anyways, back to the last situation with ECM. It's a situation where they shoot a missile and you just use ECM in response. It's the most common and there are a few things you can do. Right here I'm showing you what I do against a stinger if I know where they are. I'll basically use my rear cam to spot them out, fly back towards them with ECM up, kill them, and then fly away. And the fly away part is kind of the most crucial bit here because you will need a piece of cover. So in this situation I use the building at D and that works really well. Now you don't have to do this, it's just something that you'll do if you're a really kind of aggressive pilot. Like if you're super aggressive, you will always try to seek out the guy who's stingering you while your ECM is up and basically get something out of every single ECM. If you're flying really aggressively, you want to try to push your ECM as hard as it can go, and you're taking damage every now and then. Like you are taking stingers every, few minutes because you are really pushing the jet to its limits at that point, and you're willing to take a little bit of damage for a lot more kills. That's the whole trade-off here. And the final concept here is the whole idea of stinger bending. I don't know if there's a proper term for it, but that's kind of what I call it. And it's basically knowing how the stinger flies and abusing that to bend it into objects. So I drew up a quick diagram here on paint to try to explain what I'm saying, but the stinger has a certain way of flying where it actually kind of goes straight at where your jet wants to go. So using that, you can actually make sharp turns to try to fling stingers into buildings that they weren't intended to hit. So in this case, in the diagram, the stingers are being shot at the jet trajectory at different points in time, and you can see that later in the jet trajectory it makes a very sharp left turn, and by doing this the stinger will want to predict the jet and it will try to fly in front of it, and it actually ends up hitting the building / hard cover that I put there conveniently. Very, very convenient example. And you can actually do this in so many ways. You can almost use a stinger like a tow missile. When you see it coming, you can slowly guide it into buildings and stuff. It's so cool if you can actually learn how to bend stingers like this. And it's just some food for thought, really. I'm not expecting everyone to go out and be able to do this straight away because it does take some time to get used to. But if you can master this technique and at least use little things like some vertical cover, like what I'm doing here, basically attacking the C flag and then dipping down below the D building to avoid stingers, just that kind of basic stuff is extremely helpful. And then you can slowly just, as you're getting hit by a stinger maybe, or you don't have ECM up and you're going to take a stinger hit, just try to guide the stinger around. Like watch where it's going and watch what you can actually do with it, because you'll be amazed at how much control you can have over something that's actually supposed to be killing you. And now next thing I want to talk about here is just the altitude you want to fly at when you're using this technique. And in the condition where the enemy is using mainly lock-ons against you, I like to fly extremely low, and there's a few reasons for this, but the main one is that it keeps you off the radar. When you fly, I think, below 10 meters or so, the enemy jets and helicopters, and even I think boats can have radars, and so can AAs. Basically, all the air radars that vehicles may have will not see you. That is extremely valuable and actually results in a lot of things, but the first one is that it won't actually have you being focused as much by jets, because they won't actually see where you are. The next thing is that by not being on their radar, you can actually get the element of surprise on them. For this attack jet, I was under radar for the whole time, and I've just popped up recently, pulled up on his 6 behind the enemy stealth jet, and I've mowed him down. Speaking of stealth jets, that's when I like to use this tactic the most. You see a stealth jet flying in nice and high, pull up from under radar, maybe even pop your ECM if you want to sneak it, and just mow it down. That kind of thing is extremely useful to know, and it can actually get you some really easy stealth jet kills. Now the next huge reason for doing this, and this one is it might even be bigger than the off radar reason, is because enemy missiles that aren't Iglas and Stingers, basically non-handheld missiles or non-PLD missiles, they cannot lock you while you're under radar. That is absolutely overpowered in my opinion. Basically, like, a scout heli could be harassing you with heat seekers, you could go and shoot at it, pop your ECM, and then fly away under radar and you can't do anything about it. I do that so often, it is absolutely insane. The next common example is a boat with passive radar missiles. Boats do sometimes pull out the passive radars. It's a thing that you do if you can't use TVs or tows, I guess. TVs and tows are more effective in my opinion, but the passive radars are actually extremely overpowered and broken. But what you can do is you use your ECM on the first strafe. What they'll do is they'll probably pop APS and you might get away with about 50 damage there. What you do next is you come back at them under radar, extremely low to the ground. They can't even lock you at that point, and if they're not an experienced player, they'll probably keep trying to lock you and just wondering what's going on. Meanwhile, you're laying damage into them with 30 more cannons and you'll get them gone extremely quickly. Just in general, being able to identify that a missile is not a handheld one like an Eagle or a Stinger and then just flying under radar, that'll get you out of some sticky situations, and it is extremely helpful. Now the next really important thing is the loadout selection. So there are two main decisions that you have to make with the loadout. I've already explained that you always want ECM jammer, but there is the perk and there is the secondary. And we'll start with the secondary because it's more interesting. So you have either the Hydra Rockets or the JDAMs. Those are the two options, no other options are worth using. Now I'd recommend actually being able to use both options, and later in this gameplay I actually do pull out the Hydra Rockets and I'll show you why I use them. But to start with, the JDAMs are what I usually end up using. The reason for this is they're extremely effective against enemy vehicles, and the amount of DPS that you can put out with 30mm cannons and a JDAM is just absolutely ridiculous. Additionally, they are actually really good against AA tanks, and I do end up versing AAs on almost every single game I play, so just having something to deal with that dedicated AA player is extremely useful. Now my technique for going against AA tanks is actually just dropping JDAMs until one of them hits. Once the JDAM hits, the AA is actually hit for 50 damage and it cannot move anywhere. From there you can actually drop a second JDAM to kill it, or if it gets out to repair, go in for a strafe with your ECM up and try to kill it that way. It doesn't always work, and AAs do put out a lot of damage against jets, but for the most part this strategy does me pretty well, and especially if I really need it, I can just ask my boat to TV the AA, or just ask some teammates for help. Remember, you are a one player of 32 players on your team. Teammates can help, they can be extremely useful. Leverage them where you can. Now for the Hydra Rockets, that's the other option I do recommend, and I'll use these in a different situation. So if my team has the AA, or if I know there's a really good player in the AA who's unlikely to die, I'll probably switch out to Hydra Rockets because they are better against infantry and you can get a lot of kills with them. However, if the AA even has a slight chance really of going in the enemy team's favor, I'll probably put the JDAMs back on just in case. Now the other situation is if the map doesn't actually have an AA at all, so Nanta Strike and Lost Islands. In those situations you definitely do want to have the Hydra Rockets. And the final situation is if you have players playing on tow turrets or basically stingering a lot, basically infantry players who are a big problem to you, that's another situation where you might want to pull out the Hydras because they are really good against infantry. However, aside from these situations, I do think the JDAM is the most versatile option, and especially because you can actually fire it from any angle you want, it makes it really hard to predict. Now for the perk, you can either use Belt Feeder or Stealth Coating. They're both really good options. Stealth Coating is good if you're versing a lot of Stingers, like an insane amount of lock-ons. It will actually give you that little bit more time until they can lock it and shoot it. However, if you pre-ECM properly, I don't think you really need Stealth Coating, and Belt Feeder is just a better option in my opinion. Being able to shoot for longer comes in really handy if you're just spraying stealth jets across the map, and being able to kill a boat or a tank or anything in one amount of bullets, in one reload, that is extremely helpful. I mean, you can do it with stealth coating, but you have to be tapping the guns constantly to burst it, and it just reduces your DPS. With Belt Feeder, your DPS is retained extremely high, and you can get rid of almost any target with the guns alone. Now another thing I almost never hear people really talk about is just the nature of Battlefield and how matches end up going down. And that is that earlier on in the game, or when the game starts, both teams don't really know who's on, don't really know who's doing what, who's jetting, is the jet going to be good, is the heli going to be good, or the boat's going to be good. You never really know until the match actually starts playing out. So in these earlier stages of the game, this is where you want to really exploit this and fly as aggressively as possible, make super aggressive plays, maybe even make dumb plays to an extent, like things that should get you killed but result in you getting a few extra kills. You can often make these plays because the enemy doesn't realize that you're going to be tearing up the jet the whole game. It's only when you start to get maybe 20 or 30 kills in where the enemy thinks, Jesus Christ, okay, this guy's going to go 100 if we don't stop him, and then they start really countering you. So you want to try to exploit that as fast as possible, get to like 20 or 30 kills as quickly as you can, and then when you start to feel the pressure increase, you just feel it getting hotter and hotter, that's when you want to kind of reel it back a little bit, you know, reevaluate the situation and just dial back the aggression slowly. So basically, your aggression over time for the entire game should start off extremely high, gets lower and lower and lower. Towards the end of the game, you're pretty much fighting to get kills usually. Anyways, with that all covered, I do believe you guys know what you need to know to fly the jet with some true violent speed and momentum. However, for the rest of this game, I will just talk through what I'm doing because it is kind of interesting to get into the mindset of someone who does fly the jet like this. This is usually how I try to fly, and it is often extremely rewarding. So in this situation right now, I'm getting locked up. So I'm far enough away that I can actually fly away from that Stinger and he can't actually maintain the lock. So now coming back, I'm kind of ready for a countermeasure situation here. I'm going to pop my ECM before the Stinger gets shot. As I said, pre-ECM is useful here, and then dip down below cover at D. Now D is actually capped by the enemy here, so I do end up getting locked from there. I do try to dodge the stinger by swinging it into the island. I just narrowly missed that, and unfortunately I do get hit. However, I don't really ever try to dodge stingers without having enough health to take the damage, so no, like really lost there. My jet is on low health, but that will regenerate up quickly. Now there is a boat here, and he looks like he's interested in killing my friendly boat there, so I want to stop that. I want to make sure that my friendly boat survives because boats are extremely strong on Paracel. Now I do line him up perfectly there basically, but he does APS, so I just come back in again, you know, re-strafe this, and on the second run I will get the boat, so it's not too hard to get. He does have a repairer, so he took a lot of damage actually. Now the next boat was getting focused, he is laser guided, and he actually got bailed right there, so I'm going to kill the boat real quick, make sure no one can get it again, and then kill the infantry with a JDAM. It is pretty easy to kill infantry as they're swimming, they can't really move that much at all, so just put the JDAM straight on them and it should hit every time. Now another cool thing I'm doing here is I'm flying close to the ground as the stingers are rotating around my jet. So basically when you pop ECM, the stingers will just spaz out and just fly around your jet all the time. If you fly low to the ground while you're doing this, the stinger will just flip around your jet, hit the ground, and then it's no longer there. So that's a really useful thing to do. Now I'm looking towards D. D is an important flag to have because if enemies are on there and they're spamming your boats as they come out of spawn, it can be really annoying as the boat driver. So I like to try to make things as easy as possible for my boat users because I know how strong the boats are, especially if they are not contested. They can really ruin this map. So I like to try to make my teammates as effective as I can make them. That often will help you win games. Now here I get stinged from C and I try to use D as cover. Unfortunately there are two stingers on D locking me straight away, and unfortunately they're both going to hit, and there goes my jet. That is my first death of the game and I ended at 63 kills. I came back now with the Hydra rocket pods. As I said, I will switch to the Hydras in situations where there is an insane amount of stinger pressure, and this is one of those situations. A lot of stingers, the boats aren't really much of a problem, and I haven't seen the AA too much, so in this situation I pull out the Hydras. And a cool thing you do with the Hydras is right there, you can actually destroy helicopters with them. And if you don't destroy the helicopter, what happened there can also happen where I just pilot snipe them straight out of it. Hydras do a lot of damage to infantry, and if you hit the pilot, it's going to do an insane amount of damage. Now next little interesting thing with Hydra rockets is the angle that you choose to attack your enemies with. So with the JDAMs I was saying that I like to attack at a bit more of a shallow angle, and that's because with the 30mm cannons it's easier to hit the enemy when you see more of their body. However with the Hydra rockets it's totally different because you have splash damage. It's actually easier to hit the enemies when you're coming in from a vertical angle, so my angle that I actually attack enemies with when I'm using these is a lot higher, and it just makes it a bit more safe as well because your jet often does get pretty slow when you're shooting these because you're slowing the jet right down because you want to shoot all 14 Hydras, right? So you can be an easy shot. So coming in from a really high angle, sometimes an extreme long distance as well, is super helpful. Now the next thing I want to talk about is how to actually aim the Hydras themselves. So a lot of people, I'm not really sure, they aim with the middle of the eye. There's an eye, basically a capital I, that's what I like to call it, thing you aim the Hydras with. Now, I was talking with a friend, he's a really good Hydra user, his name's Reworks, and he recommended aiming at the top of the eye. The top of the eye is where you put the aimer to kill infantry, and if they're running, you need to lead them by just a couple millimeters, and then you'll be fine. Obviously, the couple millimeters thing depends on your monitor size and stuff, but honestly, the lead is the easiest part. Once you get used to that, you're fine, and as long as you aim at the top of the eye, you should be set. Now the only real issue with the Hydras for me is how hard it can be to kill AAs with them, and especially a good AA that knows when to hop out and quickly repair it. That can be really annoying to deal with. However, the only tactic you can really take against AAs with Hydras is just spamming them all at a long distance, waiting until you hit maybe 40 damage with them, and then you just try to strafe it. Hopefully you kill the AA. If you don't, you can always come back with JDAMs and kill them later. Now another important thing to remember is that the 30mm Gauss cannon that your jet has actually does more DPS towards tanks than Hydra rockets do. So I see a lot of players when they strafe tanks, they shoot all 14 Hydras and then they shoot their cannons. You should shoot maybe 1 or 2 Hydras to open out the fight at long distance and then switch to cannons and spray them down. That is the best way to do it in my opinion. I don't think Hydras are that great against vehicles, and I try to use mainly my cannons. Only really using the Hydras against boats because I can kill the guys off the back of them, and honestly, it's pretty funny, right? Because you can have a boat and people can keep respawning on the back of the boat, so you can just go strafe it, kill 3 guys off the back, pull up, strafe it again, kill 3 guys off the back, strafe it again, kill 3 guys off the back again, and you can get like 10 kills off one boat if you just keep on farming the guys off of the back of it. It's absolutely hilarious, and if you notice a pattern where the enemies are constantly trying to get like reps on the boat, Just throw on hydro rockets, keep strafing the back of the boat, aim it at the back of the boat, and you'll get heaps of kills on the guys gunning, guys repairing, and yeah, it's just an absolute unlimited farm. Anyways, moving into the end of this game, we're actually going to be going for the stealth jet right here, so it is really important as an attack jet pilot to have good aim. I think good aim in the attack jet will actually get you really far because the cannons do so much damage. They're actually the most damaging weapons in the game, where if you aim them extremely well, you can get rid of enemies before they even know you're coming. That is really important to know, and the attack jet is seriously strong with someone who knows how to aim behind the cockpit. So right here I have a stealth jet on my 6, and I should have really chased this guy down and finished him while I could. However, I notice he breaks off me here, and me being the farmer I am, ignores the dogfight, and I'm kind of just staying within range of my base. Here I have in mind where if the stealth jet goes for me, I'm just going to bring it to base because I don't have much time left. The clock is ticking down, my teammates are actually not doing that much at all, and we're not winning. So I need to be spending my time killing stuff. I don't need to be spending my time looping around in the sky. As much as it feels like you're doing something by doing that, the whole benefit of dogfighting is getting the kill. The action of dogfighting doesn't help your team at all. The action of killing the jet helps your team. That is all that matters. So I'm not really willing to dogfight that stealth jet. It will take too long. Not worth it. Now the attack jet on the other hand, that is worth versing in a dogfight because I can actually kill it quite quickly, and because I have my ECM up right now, I'm trying to do some little like tricky things to throw him off, and sure enough he gets thrown off. I think the base aim may be hitting him up, or he might be getting locked. Either way, he overextends to my side of the map, and it is extremely hard to win a dogfight in that location. Even if I was the pilot of that attack jet, I'd have to end the dogfight extremely quickly before enemies start locking onto me, and if I get locked on, then I have to fly back to my base, and then the enemy gets my 6, and so on. That becomes an extremely bad situation. So sometimes you can literally win a dogfight by your positioning. You must not only know how to dogfight, but you also must know where to dogfight. If you dogfight in a bad spot against good players, you'll get killed. You will literally get killed if you do it in the wrong spot. Now in this situation right here, I've basically given up on my team. I'm looking at the tickets, I'm looking at the situation, and it just gets to a point where you can't do much. I mean, our AA is sitting on our spawn island, not protecting the flag that he's supposed to be protecting. AA should always kind of be around B, make sure that we don't lose B. It is an extremely good farming vehicle on this map. Once you have B secured and no enemies are going for it, then you can drive it over to the other flags, but I don't want to see AAs on the spawn island. Not on this map, it's way too strong. Anyways, that is what my teammates are doing with it, and unfortunately my boats aren't doing much better either. I like to say that the attack jet is like the farm enabler, so maybe you won't do so well in the attack jet sometimes. Sometimes you won't actually have the spotlight. But by playing well in the attack jet, you will enable everybody else on your team to do really well. Think about it, if you're killing all the vehicles, getting rid of the AA, basically your boats have no problems. They just have to shoot infantry, which is easy. And your helis have no problems either because they don't have to kill an AA. So you just enable the farm for your entire teammates, and you gotta hope that they do something good with it. In this case, not only do I enable a pretty big match for my team, if they want it, but I do really well myself as well. So this is a situation where there is no way that my team should be losing, but unfortunately, this is a server that the matches just end up being really unbalanced most of the time, and it's almost never an even game. So we will end up losing this match. However, I hope you guys did learn something from it, and I had a lot of fun playing it, so I'm not really too bummed about that. Anyways, if you did enjoy the content, again, be sure to head over to my live stream. I stream 3 days a week, we have a lot of fun over there, and I love to see some familiar names. Also, let's be real, if you've watched this much of the video, my videos are going to be recommended to you via the YouTube algorithm, so you might as well subscribe because it does the exact same thing. Anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.